address it, but what is it, Mr. Lewin?
Your Honor, so the issue is that, as the court's aware, that under 795, law enforcement is not allowed to participate in hypnosis. In addition, there are specific requirements regarding when hypnosis can be conducted. So
This witness was not hypnotized
Right,
on this case.
no, but the problem is Mr. Chesnoff is in essence saying to the witness, well, you wanted to be hypnotized, and my concern is the jury is going to go, well, why wasn't she hypnotized? What we're
I
requesting,
don't think so. I told him to disregard it.
so what we're requesting is, because he's asked several questions about it, is that the court simply instruct the jury that hypnosis cannot be used for a witness who testifies. It can't, except under certain conditions, which are not the case here. In other words, it would have to be non-law enforcement. There would have to be a hearing that the information that she provided was provided prior to hypnosis. So the whole reason she'd be hypnotized would be a reason that she cannot be in this case.
Denied. Okay, let's get the jurors in.
Can I move this up a step?
Pardon?
Can I move this up a little bit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's better, actually.
Jurors don't like to. Yeah, he's tripping over.
Durst is present with Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin. We have Mr. Bailey and Mr. Henderson. Mr. Lewin present. Our witness, Ms. Harmon, has resumed the witness stand. I'll remind you that you're under oath. Mr. Chesnoff, you may continue with your cross-examination of the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, during your November 3rd meeting with law enforcement, you told them about what you remember about a comment about a stairway. Remember that?
Yes.
And at the time, you remember saying, page 4, line 11, and even if it is something to do, I could be hypnotized because I don't want to lead it in the wrong direction. Because, of course, I've been influenced by what I've read. Do you remember saying that?
Didn't read anything about a staircase.
Okay, ma'am, I know this is probably the first time you've done this, testified. Is that right?
Like this.
In a courtroom?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you when you're done reading. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to listen to the question and answer what's being asked of you. Mr. Bailey will have a chance to talk to you again if things need to be.
But you're asking me halfway through what I'm saying. The whole statement holds, but not halfway through
Okay,
what you asked me.
How I do this is basically the way I'm allowed to do it. So let me ask you this again. And even if it is something to do, I could be hypnotized because I don't want to lead it in the wrong direction. Because, of course, I've been influenced by what I've read. Okay? That's your words, is it not?
With the next sentence.
Okay. Fine. But you did tell law enforcement that you were concerned about leading people in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because in this instance, you've been influenced by what you've read, correct?
And tucked that away. What I said was not influenced by what I read.
Does that say, because, of course, I've been influenced by what I've read?
And that I tucked that away
Okay,
that I
ma'am.
said.
I got that part.
Okay, good.
Do you have the sentence in front of it?
Yes, but there is a contradictory point of those two sentences.
That's exactly right. We'll move on. Did you always have a question in your mind about where your memories were coming from? Why did I remember that?
Objection, that's vague as to
Never had a question in my mind.
which memory.
Okay, the objection, I'll I'm going to overrule it. No speaking objections.
Objection made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you remember telling law enforcement, page 4, line 25, because when I was reading, I thought, well, but then how could they say that? Because she disappeared. Mr. Lewin, right. So why did I remember that? That was a question you were asking him. You remember that?
Why did I remember about the staircase?
Why did you remember? Was it influenced by what you were reading? That's what you were saying.
No.
Okay. Do you agree that that's what that says?
I agree that it said about being tucked away and that I didn't read about that.
Okay. Moving on. Do you remember at some point in time Susan saying to you they were going to open the case again? Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, and do you remember you're telling the police, she didn't ever give me the impression that was anything to be concerned about. Remember that?
She wouldn't have wanted me to worry,
Ma'am?
no.
Let's do this again.
Well, let's start out with this premise, and that is, ask her now what she presently recollects, and if she doesn't recollect, you may refresh her recollection. If she said something different previously, then, and only then, may you confront her with an inconsistent statement for her to have a chance to deny or explain it. Okay? Proceed that way.
I appreciate that, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Do you remember Susan Berman giving you the impression that when she told you about reopening the case, there was nothing to be concerned about?
I think that, yes.
Okay? Thank you, Your Honor. Do you remember telling law enforcement, I would say 70 to 80, my memory, because there is no way to check these things, only if I could be put under, because I've never wanted to say anything, because first of all, he could have been innocent. Remember telling them that?
Well, yes, I do.
Okay,
We would hope so.
okay. Do you remember telling law enforcement that at no time did Susan Berman ever tell you that she had made a phone call to what you described as the provost at the medical school, correct?
She didn't confide that in me.
Okay. And in addition, when you were discussing any calls that Susan may have made, it was always in the plural, calls, C-A-L-L-S, not a singular call. Is that true? Because you knew Susan was good at public relations and speaking to people. There were multiple calls that she may have told you about, correct?
That she may have made. I don't know, what that all would have been.
But nothing about calling the dean or the provost of the medical school, correct?
That was, no, when she'd solved
Okay,
things.
that's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
no.
Thank you. Do you remember?
She wouldn't connive with me. I mean, this isn't,
No, don't.
Okay. Do you remember telling law enforcement Susan wasn't a part of anything because she loved Kathy?
Also, hearsay.
Yes, that's right. Sustained.
Kathy never told you, I'm sorry, Susan never told you that she knew Kathy had died and Bobby had dragged the body off somewhere or something like that, did she?
Same issue, it's calling for hearsay.
Overruled.
Susan never told you that,
Oh, I
did
see.
she?
I understand. Sustain.
I'm sorry?
I'm
You
sustaining.
reversed yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Is there a question?
There's no question right now.
Okay.
You knew she was smart, correct? Meaning Susan? Smart person? Susan was well
Is that
educated.
impertinent?
Sorry?
She's asking you if you think Susan was smart.
Very smart person.
Very educated, correct?
Smart.
Experienced in the news world, correct?
He was a reporter, an award-winning reporter, yes.
Award-winning, correct?
She got some things that she didn't get credit for because she had to go undercover, but yes, she was very good.
Okay. And as a result, she knew her way around the news world, correct? How papers worked, how magazines work, how publishers work, correct?
Well,
Yes or no?
I suppose as much as, whatever that means,
As much as an experienced reporter who won awards would, correct?
yes.
Okay. And so, and she also liked to help people, correct?
Oh, not relentlessly.
No, but you said earlier today that she did nice things for people.
Whatever the karmic debts between Mr. Durst and Susan were, she would have helped him and he would have helped her.
Okay. And if she could help him because of her experience in the news world, she would have done that, correct?
I believe so.
And if she could help him in a time of trouble when he was worried about his missing wife, she would have done that, correct?
Well, naturally, she would have found out everything she could.
Right, to help with the situation, correct?
Yes, to
And of
solve
course-
it. If Kathy had run away, she would have tried to have solved the problem.
Overruled.
And if she could have helped Bob in his efforts to find Kathy because she loved Kathy, she would have done that, correct?
If they were arguing, I don't know about that.
Well, couples argue, don't they? They have disagreements, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, Susan had disagreements with Paul Kaufman, correct?
yeah.
In fact, Paul Kaufman basically helped Susan lose all her money, didn't he?
Overruled.
Correct?
That was a mistake.
Right. He led her down the primrose path with this flop of a show, and she lost all her money.
No, that's not
Well,
accurate.
the show never appeared on Broadway, did it?
No, but it wasn't because of Paul. It was because they couldn't raise the money. I was there.
Okay. Right.
They didn't have enough sponsors.
Right. But they lost all their money, correct?
They did lose their money and other people's money.
Right.
Wasn't just them that thought it was going to go.
Okay. And then, of course, they separated when that happened, correct?
Right.
And she was left to fend for herself, correct?
Yeah, they sold the house. She sold the house.
Right. And his own blood daughter wound up living with her, right?
Well, yeah,
Okay, not with her father, but with Susan, correct?
right.
And when Susan needed financial help, after Paul abandoned her and his daughter, different friends helped Susan, didn't they?
She went to his family and got money from Ella to go to college. It wasn't a complete abandonment.
Okay. He didn't live with her.
No,
He didn't pay child support, correct?
I don't know.
Okay, but meanwhile, Susan had to reach out to people like yourself, people like Bob, to help her financially after the disaster with the show in New York, correct?
I don't know if I would put it like that, but as it happened,
Are you suggesting that Paul, let's go back a little. Paul was like your brother's best friend, right?
he was close for a long time.
Right. But you would agree that Paul abandoned his daughter, correct?
No,
Well, he didn't live with her.
So what?
Well, he left her with someone who hadn't even adopted her. Not
Because
that
she would.
not that Susan didn't do a good thing, but a natural birth father left his daughter with someone.
He raised those kids by himself, virtually by himself. If Mela preferred to live with Susan, it's because Susan was a great person to live with, not because Paul abandoned them.
So your testimony is Paul is a great character.
I didn't say that either.
Do you remember telling Mr. Lewin, I held back from saying things because I'm not sure where I got it from? Movies, magazines, Najami? Who's Najami?
I didn't know her. She's the friend of Kathy's that has tried to keep the cold case going, but I don't know her.
Right, but you knew that she had various theories about what happened, correct?
She kept pushing to open the case, and
Right, and you were aware of that, correct?
well, only slightly.
Enough to know her name, right?
Right.
And I think you described her background, what nationality she was when you
Well,
spoke to Mr.
that's pretty
Lewin.
clear, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's pretty obvious.
Wasn't to me, but. Remember telling Mr. Lewin, I don't want to lead you astray, and that's why I wish I could retrieve things better?
Well, isn't that a natural response?
Is that, can you please answer the question? Do you remember saying that?
I would say that.
Okay?
Look, Susan was rewriting her will when
Stop,
she was
stop.
before
Ma'am.
she died.
Don't volunteer.
Look, I understand she was your friend, and I understand you have things to say, but this isn't the place. The place was when you were talking to the police.
Okay, let's not. I
I'm
don't
sorry,
need
Your
more
Honor.
Comments from lawyers
Yep.
like that. That's in the form of an argument.
I-
The point is that I need to control the proceedings and listen to each question before you answer it. That's all.
Do you remember telling Mr. Lewin that Susan told you there was a miscarriage of justice that was about to take place upon a friend of hers? And I'm not letting that happen? Can I finish my question? That's what you.
They cannot bring Susan's statements in, they're hearsay.
All right, but the way you object to that is objection hearsay.
He kept
Otherwise,
talking, I wasn't able, he was trying to get what he could out in an improper fashion.
rather, you're interrupting in an improper fashion, Mr. Lewin, so please be quiet now. Let me hear the question, and then if it's improper, I will sustain an objection and have it disregarded as needed. Please repeat your question or make a new question.
During the time that Susan was talking to you about events regarding Mr. Durst, like the events you testified to in response to Mr. Ballion's question, do you remember her telling you there was a miscarriage of justice that was about to take place upon a friend of hers, and I'm not letting that happen?
There's a hearsay objection, I'll sustain it.
Now, what does that relate to? She knew a
Sustain,
lot of
wait,
people.
well, hold. When I sustain an objection, you are not to answer. Mr. Lewin?
Yes, could the jury be instructed, Your Honor, to disregard that question?
Well, they disregard all questions, so when I strike an answer, whenever I strike an answer, disregard the question. And if a lawyer asks a question and I sustain an objection, disregard the question and draw no conclusion. The statements of lawyers are not evidence, and you must not consider the question. The questions of lawyers are important only to the extent they help you understand the answer. The answer is evidence. So with that, yes?
Could Mr. Chestnut be instructed, the court's made rulings pursuant to 1390, this is the third time that he has
Okay,
brought
no.
up questions in violation.
No,
I don't
no.
want to have to object.
Let's not have our arguments like this in front of the jury. We're not taking their time with these kind of arguments. 1390 is, as a hearsay exception, is one directional. Do you see? You can't take, that's not a hearsay exception for you. Okay?
Your Honor, when you
Yes.
make a ruling, I
Yeah,
stop
so
asking.
be mindful of that.
Thank you, I will
please.
be, Your Honor. I will be. Ms. Harmon, I have no further questions.
All right, Mr. Balian, you may proceed with a redirect examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Harmon, I just have a few questions for you.
Yes, sir.
You started to say something and you used the word, you said Susan would go undercover. So were there situations you were aware of where Susan would go undercover in working as a reporter?
Yeah, I was a reporter, and she, yeah,
Is that yes?
she was very brave and did some stuff.
So, was there an instance that sticks out in your mind of one case that she was reporting on that was kind of a big case where she kind of changed her identity and went undercover?
Well, I wrote an article that was published about the Patty Hearst thing, and we laughed because she said, yeah, I went undercover looking for them. But she also found Vice President Agnew, and she, you know, you can say that she was paranoid, but she was a fine, brave reporter.
Let me ask you this then. Just, you use the word undercover. The Susan that you knew, was it beyond her character to pretend she was someone else?
No.
Is that something she would do in situations if she needed to achieve a goal?
Objection, lack of foundation, Your Honor.
I'll sustain it.
Not compulsively, but
Sustained.
when called upon.
Disregard the answer, please. I've disregarded the question and the answer. Stricken.
Your Honor, can we approach with
No.
an offer of proof?
No,
What's that?
no, you may not. Go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
You discussed on cross-examination that you weren't sure exactly where Susan was when you had this phone conversation with her. Now,
I mean, I'm sure if I thought about it, I would know, but
but it's okay, that's not what I'm going to ask you. What I want to ask you is, were you more focused on where Susan was when you had this conversation, or the content of what she was telling you?
I wasn't. She called me out of the blue. It was like telling me something. I wasn't thinking where she was. But like I tell you, I can tell you exactly where I was
Your
because
Honor,
it was.
Can you ask the witness?
I think
mean,
she's-
I guess that's an answer, but
Yes, but it's a little off track. But
Yes, I was more focused on what she was saying than where she was.
Okay, thank you. There were some questions about your offers or your wishes that you could be hypnotized. Now, when you made those statements, were you trying in your mind to express some doubt about your memories of the things you were able to tell us?
objection leading, Your Honor. What were you?
close. I'll allow that.
It was
but-
to prove that what I was saying was true.
Okay. Were you, do you have any doubts as you sit here today about the memories you've given us?
No.
Do you wish you could remember more?
No, I've told you everything that I remember and what I was told.
Okay.
It's very vivid.
And do you recall when you met with Mr. Lewin and I, we were asking you about whether Susan had told you that she made phone calls. Do you remember us asking those type of questions?
Right.
And in fact, do you remember telling us, I wish I could tell you that, but I just don't have a memory of that?
That's right.
So, were you there in your view just to answer questions that you thought we wanted to hear, or were you just telling us what you remember?
I'm telling you, that part of, I wasn't in on that discussion of it.
Okay. You've talked about Susan telling you about a fight that Mr. Durst had with his wife and an accident in a staircase. Have you ever read about anything involving a staircase
No.
on this case?
No.
Have you ever seen a movie that depicted anything about a staircase involving
I
this case?
stopped watching any of that. I can't. I'm the least educated on that whole deal of any of it.
Okay, so if you haven't read or heard anything about a staircase and an accident, then why are you telling us these things?
Because Susan told me, and it stands out in my mind, because she was upset. She was a problem solver, not a problem giver, and she was sharing information that was upsetting to her.
Okay. And you're here today to relate what Susan told you, correct?
Correct.
You're not here to testify about the veracity of whatever was told to her, correct? In other words,
I can only tell you what she told me.
you can't talk about the veracity of whoever told that to Susan, right?
Well, presumably,
Well, but you don't know whether what was told to her was truthful or not. You can just tell us what she told you, right?
but
Yes or no?
That's correct. But she heard it from Mr. Durst, not,
Okay.
Objection, Your Honor. That's not the
strike
testimony.
it.
Move to strike.
I'll strike it.
okay,
Strike
sorry.
it.
Did she tell you where she heard it from?
Yes,
Who did she say she heard it from?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Beyond the scope now.
Overruled.
Okay.
Who did she say she heard it from?
Mr. Durst. She would say Bobby.
Gonna be here a while.
As needed.
Sorry.
Thank you, I've not. Well, one last area of inquiry. You've testified at length on cross-examination. Actually, two areas, I apologize. The first time you were spoken to by the police on December 26th of the year 2000. Now, you were shown a police report where you didn't mention anything about this conversation with Susan, right?
The years before, right.
Okay. So why is it that that didn't come up in this first interview?
I wasn't even sure if it was her. I had to go to the mortuary. I didn't even know, it wasn't related to anything. They say your friend's dead, you can't find her or don't know where she is. It wasn't concerned about what had happened years ago.
Did you even know that Bobby Durst was a suspect when you were interviewed in 2000?
Well, because he didn't come to the memorial, everybody was upset about that and thought, what the heck?
But that was after December 26, 2000, right?
Correct.
So I'm saying, when you were interviewed by the police on December 26, 2000, and you're being asked questions, was your focus on what happened to Susan?
Yes,
Was your focus on Bobby Durst?
no,
Had you even made the connection?
no. Even now.
You mentioned something about defense counsel was asking you questions about your statements that Bobby Durst could be innocent, right? And you made a statement, you said something like, we would hope so about the statements you were giving. What were you trying to say? You would hope so what?
No one would want this to have happened and to such good friends come to such a terrible end.
Okay. Would you want somebody to be wrongly convicted?
Of course not, but it's not as if it's
Would
a
you-
terrible thing.
Would you come in here and say that things happened if they didn't happen?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination, recross.
Thank you. Ma'am, if I told you that in all these years, until about 11:45 on today's date, you have never told a single person that Bob Durst told Susan about an accident in the stairway, would you argue with me?
Question assumes facts, not an evidence.
Overruled.
Naturally, who told her? I mean, how would she have
Okay,
known?
so when you say that, that's your guess, but you don't know how Susan
She
heard-
told me that he had called her. I mean, what's the...
Okay, listen to my question very carefully, okay? I know this is tough for you, and I know that you were her friend, but I want you to listen to the question. Would you agree that until 11:45 on today's date, you have never, ever said to anyone that Bob Durst is the one who told Susan about the problem on the stairway. Would you agree with that?
No.
When did you tell them then? Who did you tell?
Who's the them? I mean,
The
that-
police. When did you ever tell the police that Bob Durst is the person who told Susan Berman about the stairway?
whenever who I talk to about it.
So if I give you all of the reports to read over these 20 years, and I can save you the time, and let you read them, you're telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that you have previously said that Susan told you Bob said it? Or could you be wrong?
I can't be wrong, no.
Okay, so you don't know. So did you ever tell anybody that before? Today's date.
Anyone that I talk to,
Did you ever tell the police before today's date that Bob Durst is the one who said that? Yes or no?
Bobby called me. A terrible thing has
Okay,
happened.
Did you ever tell that to, this is simple. Did you ever tell that to anybody
Of
before
course,
today?
anyone that I mentioned it to.
Okay, so it should be in all the police reports then, right?
That's an
Okay.
improper question. It's
Okay,
also
Stan.
argumentative.
Okay, do you know if it's in the report with Mr. Lewin? Because he was there and it's recorded. So we could call witnesses that were there and play it.
Okay, that's, sustain, you keep that to yourself, do whatever you need to do, but ask the witness.
Will you stipulate, Mr. Lewin, that she's never said that before?
Counsel,
I'm just asking a simple
I'm going to
question.
give you the respect of not answering that question in front of the jury,
Yeah, let's
which,
not.
which you're
Let's-
lucky that I'm
let's
giving
just
you that
stop.
respect.
Stop with that.
Show it, if you got it.
You have the transcript.
Okay. Ma'am, let me ask you this. You don't really know where Susan,
Bobby called me. He's upset. There's been an accident. If it doesn't say that, my error.
okay, then let me ask it to you this way. Assuming that perhaps you said something to somebody to that effect, presume that. That's based on Susan telling you that Bobby told her that, correct? Correct?
Of course.
Okay. Do you know what source Bobby might have heard? Najami, the police, rumors, newspapers, TV shows. You don't know at all what the basis for Susan's statement that Bob told her, what his source was, do you? You're
I'm so
Vague,
far.
unintelligible.
If you can understand it, you can.
I couldn't understand.
Okay, rephrase.
Okay. Other than your statement today, and perhaps at some point in time, telling somebody in law enforcement that you thought Bob said it, you don't know from where
She
Bob...
called me. He had just called her.
Right, but you don't know where Bob would have heard it from, do you?
What?
You don't know the source that Bob may have been relying on.
It was in the same 24-hour period that it occurred.
I understand, ma'am, but listen. If Bob was being attacked in the press,
How could he be attacked in the press? No one knew that something terrible had happened.
well, they knew that she was disappeared, didn't they?
No, it had just happened. She called me. Something terrible happened. What can we do? I don't know what I'm going to do.
Okay.
That was in the
And
moment.
the terrible thing was that she disappeared, or the terrible thing was there was an accident
There
on the
was an
stairs?
accident. It had just happened.
But you never told that particular fact to the police within the first days or months of Susan being murdered, did you?
Because to me,
Did you?
the two things had nothing to do with each other.
Okay. And if I misspoke, ma'am, about whether or not you have previously said it at some point in time, I apologize. But I'm trying to,
I know.
okay, I want you to know that.
One question.
Yes?
Do you know personally if what Bob told Susan was a true representation of what actually happened?
And as I
You
was
know.
probably the first or second person to have been told by her that this was something that was,
Your Honor,
Listen to my question, please.
I'll strike it.
Do you personally know, as you sit here today, whether what Bob told Susan was actually true. Do you know that personally, based on firsthand knowledge?
I don't know that, no.
Thank you.
You guys know? Anything else?
Alien did it for me.
Right, okay. So, may this witness be excused?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, excellent news. Thank you for your testimony. You are now excused.
Thank you kindly, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a long lunch today, right? We discussed that, so we're going to come back at 2 o'clock. And when you come, until you come back, do not converse, actually, at all times, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We'll see you at 2 o'clock.